talking about the process, right? Because it's not about winning and losing this season. It's more about losing than it is winning. But the big thing, it's about the process. Let's hear Rick Tocchet talking about that process today in pregame.
Yeah, well, it comes to everybody wants the result, but you got to be part of the process. And I think, the Devils have gone through a process to get the results they're getting now. It's no different than us. We want results, but I'm not worried about the results. I'm worried about the process. And I know that's the most overused word. We all use it, coaches, but it's true. The way you deal practices, the way you deal day to day. How do you make young guys be a pro, a real pro? It's a process. You can't just say, hey, we want to win games. There's so much into it. So I think, this organization, the Devils, they've gone through it, the last 3-4 years to get to their point where they are.
This is...
What do you think? Bringing up the Devils kind of interesting.
Well, it is. Well, they're playing them tonight.
Well, I know that. I know, but I'm just saying the way
you're right. You're right. I
you don't hear a coach talk about like the swing of an organization in that way. You talk about them talk about what they do on the ice, but to hear, I liked, man, I tell you, like since Tocchet's come in, like
I like Tocchet a lot.
I have liked the way he's talked, but you know what? I'll be honest here because I've been hurt before. I love the way that Rutherford and Alvin talked when they came here, right? They've still made a lot of things that I don't think that they should have done, but I like the way that Tocchet's at least talked about these situations. Talked about it. Talkated about it.
The chat's enjoying my noises that I was making.
What's that?
Knucklehead said, get a soundbite of Quads making whatever noise that just was. Sounded like you jabbed a horse with a pointy stick.
Oof.
And then in quotation marks wrote, Quads, you're killing me. Anyways, let's get back on track here.
We'll dig it up.
Let's get back on track because, Chris, what we just heard from the Canucks head coach, right? It's like
process, baby.
It is music to Canucks fans' ears because we get caught up in semantics sometimes with the word retool, the word rebuild. And hey, like I was out here criticizing when they, didn't move on Kuzmenko and make the trade. They went for an extension instead. I had my criticism about that. But that being said, the actual process, again, like Tocchet said, on the ice, I think all anybody wants is for it to look better next year. Like the Canucks got wins last year under Bruce Boudreau because that's what he was brought in to do. Like Bruce Boudreau was brought in by the owner to get wins for the owner's team. Okay? This coach we're seeing right now is not being brought in to get wins. And that's all Canucks fans want. They want a coach that's going to implement those good habits and create, again, rebuild, retool, whatever. That's how you rebuild a culture. That's how you actually rebuild an organization. I understand you got to get rid of personnel. I understand all that. But again, you're starting to see the pro scouting of this organization, and just in the sense of every player they've targeted, Riley Stillman not included because that was for cap reasons. Every player they've targeted has been a good bet. Like they haven't gone out and got someone that didn't mesh. Like they seem to have a good handle on, okay, this is who we should be targeting. There's no Spiza. There's no good Bransons.
Yeah.
There's no, like, Ilya Mikheyev. You can criticize why they signed him. He fit in really well on this team.
If you didn't have a lot of the other things that this Canucks situation was, but you know what? You have to build off of what you have, right? You have to build or rebuild off of what you have. You can't just walk into an organization and, all right, this is what we're going to start doing now moving forward. That's the way I look at it. Is like, if there are really retooling and rebuilding, maybe it is a year. Like it's more than just, it's not like they could come in and trade OEL and trade, Brock. It's not like, it is a process to get all this stuff done. And yeah, the organization has to deal with the stuff that the organization was doing before this management group got here. Like they have a lot to deal with before they can really get their team together. And I think that's the part that you don't like to argue retool versus rebuild, but I think in a rebuild, you get to that spot actually quicker, because in a retool, I don't know if you get to that spot. Like, I don't know if you get to the spot of like, okay, we got our base, let's build a new structure of the organization.
Well,
with a retool, it feels like you have a structure of the organization and you change some pieces around with it.
Well, I think,
right? Like that's how I look at it.
And I understand they were a little bit forced into the move, but I think trading Bo Horvat, like you are rebuilding your foundation. Giving the assistant captains to Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and being very upfront about that. You are rebuilding. You're rebuilding your leadership group. Talk has talked about, I want these guys leading by example with practice habits.
Perfect example. 2 good examples, yes, but 2 great examples saying that they're going the complete opposite way is signing JT Miller, signing Andrei Kuzmenko. Like those are 2 moves in the complete opposite direction.
Hang on a sec. I would not, and again, I've come around on this in recent days. The Kuzmenko signing, they go out, get this guy in free agency, right? They like what he brings to the locker room. You've been around Kuzmenko. He's a very nice guy to be around.
Love him, yeah.
Absolutely.
He's the best.
And he's Elias Pettersson's #1 winger right now, right? And he's here for 2 more years. Again, I understand the idea that, okay, well, at the expiry of that, he's probably going to cost them a lot and they won't even be able to keep him. But, you know, if you're bringing in this young talent over these next 2 years or whatever it is you're going to do, you still got to have a top end. And again, I'm not justifying not moving him at the deadline. I think it was a bad move not to trade him at the deadline. I agree with you. But I'm not saying that, oh, well, you know, if they keep Kuzmenko, they're just using the same foundation. That's part of their new foundation. They went out and got this guy. He's not an older guy that they inherited. They went out and got this guy. They're proud of him. He's worked out really well, and they kept him. I'm not saying that was the right move, but I'm also not going to criticize them and say, oh, well, you know, their foundation is flawed because Kuzmenko's a part of it, and they doubled down on Kuzmenko. Like they went out and got him. I think that's a fine move for them. I respect it in that sense. JT, it's a different conversation, sure.
Yeah, I don't want to
keep talking about this.
I don't want to dig it up either.
I have something here.
One day when it's slower, we'll dive more into this. I just think that, you know,
I have something here.
You could have got a lot more 3 years down the road with a trade than you will, because you mentioned it. You won't be able to sign Kuzmenko after this deal.
Mm-hmm.
You likely won't, unless anyways, I'll talk about it another day.
Okay, so this is what I wanted to say. I want to talk about, so what now for the rest of the year? Where do the Canucks go from here? And I summed it up last night. This is, if everything goes perfectly, this is the perfect finish to the season for the Canucks.
Go easy on that table a little bit. You're shaking the camera.
Whatever.
I can see it.
Okay, here's what I have.
Okay.
If the Canucks lose every game from here on out and get a seriously good spot in the Bedard sweepstakes, that's a good thing. Yeah, that's a very good thing for this team.
Gimme. That's
a very good thing. So Canucks losing like every game from here on out, that's a very good thing for this team to go through. Now, while that's happening, JT Miller starts to work out some of his kinks at center, right? Starts to be a reliable, at least second line center that you can actually go into next season saying, you know what? Tocchet's got him playing defense. Tocchet has him, you know, feeling confident at center. Like, it's not all about JT's defensive play on the wing. Sometimes he just struggles to create offense when he's not playing on the wing, right? Like, he creates a lot more offense when he's on the wing than he is at center, right? Like, it's not all defense. I know the defense gets brought up a lot, but it's both. And I would like to see JT take some strides as a center. Now, if that happens, again, Elias Pettersson doesn't miss a beat with the coaching change, just continues to play the way he has been. And Beauvillier, Garland, Podkolzin, Besser, whoever, rebuild their value. Not so much Podkolzin doesn't belong in that conversation, but Beauvillier, Garland, Besser, rebuild their value. Look, team could trade one of those guys. They have too many wingers. Everybody knows that. Or, you know, they work out in Vancouver. Like, they're like, hey, we really like these guys and we want to keep 1 or 2 of them, right?
Yeah, that's a key point at the end there, 1 or 2 of them, because everything you said there, man, like that's I saw why the tin hat came out for a while there. That's a lot of things coming together to make it but you're right. End. But what you're saying is, yeah, that is the perfect run to the season, right? Like, that is, if everything goes right. And listen, if you think about it, for the Canucks, things have gone almost entirely in their direction in recent years. Like, think about the bubble year, right? Everything went their direction, like, after the season shut down until the end of the year there, aside from, like, you know, losing to Vegas. Like, they had a lot of things go their way, and they had great goaltending last year at 5-on-5. Like, things can bounce the Canucks' way. This season, that has not happened. Not a lot of bounces, or, you know, not even just talking about bounces on the ice. I'm talking bounces around the organization. Like, nothing has gone really swimmingly for this organization up to this point. So you could see that happen. And I think that comes, though, like the bounces, they talk about that in hockey with luck, right? You got to create your own luck. I think it can be looked at in the organization a little bit, and how this process changes. You can actually get to the point of what you said, or like, if you set yourself up for it, yes, you can have that perfect end of the season, but you need to make sure that all the pieces are in the right spot to make it even possible. right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now is you are starting to see some of those pieces come into play and be into, you mentioned it, like you need to see JT Miller at center. Well, now he's always going to be a top 6 center, right? You need to see Pettersson take more of a leadership role. Well, now he's got an A on his chest and he's got that winger locked up for a while. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are setting themselves up to have what you talked about on what now could happen for the perfect season. Like they're giving themselves an opportunity for it to happen at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's all you really want. And again, to answer the question that we posed, so where do the Canucks go from here? The place where I want to see the Canucks go, and again, all that best case scenario stuff aside, I want to see the Canucks follow through on what we just heard Tocchet say about we're not interested in results, we're interested in building the process.
See, like there was a couple things in that talk where I was like, wow, I really like that's what we've been saying.
That's
like,
all you want to see. That's where the Canucks go from here is they don't change their philosophy and say, well, you know what, winning matters. We got to start getting some wins here. Build that process. Build that process. Roll 4 lines. Don't injure Quinn Hughes because you played him for 29 minutes a night. You know what I mean? That's where the Canucks have to go from here. And whatever happens, I think it's going to be a lot of losses. Happens, right? The other thing,
I like it though.
Where the Canucks go from here, play JT at center. I know he's probably going to complain about playing center. Again, I won't use the word complain, but like he has said, like, yeah, I just feel better at wing.
Yeah.
Don't let him have his way there. Like he has to play center for this team. He has to. And this is a rare opportunity before an extension kicks in for you to actually teach this guy how to play center because you're going to need him to for the next 8 years, 7 years.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say. You don't have to, you don't have to be a brainiac to see that this team isn't going to be a playoffs team. You can see that they're just able to play out the rest of the season here. And if they can work on some things instead of working on getting wins, it's going to benefit them more for next season and the year after that. So that's the way I'm looking at it too. I think we could have a finish to the season where there's a lot of positivity. And I think the more positivity actually comes from the more losses, which is kind of rare in a sports organization. That if you think about it, like if the Canucks were to lose more games than they did in the start of the year, as they kind of finish up the season here, people would be pretty positive because they're knowing that at least there's a very high pick coming back and this team is taking that step back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.